Hello, everyone. Today, the topic of discussion is redefining aging, and I'm joined by the gorgeous Faith Agugu from Silver Sirens. We're going to be giving insights into how to view aging in a positive way so that you can really thrive in your second half. My name is Deb, and welcome to Women Reinventing Midlife TV, where we aim to inspire women over 50 to thrive in a meaningful life that you deeply desire and deserve. Faith is a mental health professional, and she's the founder of the annual event Silver Sirens and the online resource Silver Sirens Sanctuary. She's an Australian leader in the global positive aging movement, which seeks to champion women over 50 to redefine how they approach aging. I've personally contributed to Faith's Silver Sirens Sanctuary a number of times, and I love the culture that she's developing there. She's made a number of appearances on TV around this topic of viewing aging in a positive way. So I'm excited to share this with you, which is an interview that was recorded for the Women Reinventing Midlife Summit in 2023. Remember, if you find this content helpful, to please subscribe to this channel because it supports us in continuing to bring more positive information around aging to you. So let's go watch and listen. Faith, welcome. I'm so glad you've joined us.
Oh, thank you so much, Deb, for including me in this conversation. I'm so honored to be here.
I'm so glad that you've been able to join us, and I know you've got a lot going on, so I'm extra grateful that you've made this time to have this conversation. And I know we're going to be talking about your passion, which is redefining aging. And I know you're a big part of the positive aging movement. But before we go into that, I'd love you to share your transitional story, because like many of us, yours began many, many years ago, didn't it?
Yeah, look, my transitional story began, and at that time, I called it a midlife crisis. I know better now, but at that time, I didn't have women like you in my life or other women that were transitioning and empowering us to transition well. So I just was flailing, So I had a business that I'd had for 13 years. The business was falling apart. I'd hoped to be a mother and I wasn't. I got to the stage where I realized that motherhood was no longer open to me. I thought that I was going to get married to a man. The relationship fell apart. Yeah. So it was my late 40s, we're around 47, and I looked around me and my life was not what I thought it was going to be. And I had to close down that business that I was holding on to for dear life. And for me, because I didn't have the other things, that was my identity. So I did not want to give this up, even though it was clear that it wasn't working anymore. So the hanging on to that caused me so much distress. In the end, I had a mental breakdown, And so I went through then what is classically known as that midlife crisis, where there was a lot of depression, like a lot of self-doubt, a lot of self-esteem issues, a lot of identity issues, and a lot of what next? Who was I going to be if I wasn't this person that ran this business for such a long time? And then at the same time, I'd been struggling for many years with crippling fibroids. So I had a hysterectomy, and then that induced menopause. So I had what's known as medically induced menopause. So everything just kept crashing in all around that time. And I just thought, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? That was what that would look like.
Wow. So it is kind of like the phoenix rising from the ashes, isn't it? It's very much that.
Yeah, it really was, and I just did what I knew best, which was just resort to the tools that I had, which was meditation, nature, friends. So I started ocean swimming. So I started swimming laps in the ocean pool every single morning and meeting with friends and just sitting and just really literally going through the carcasses of my life, going, what's left, what can I do next? And that 6 months that I gave myself off to do that reinforced to me that what I loved doing most of all was helping women. So I went to uni and got a degree in psychotherapy. And I started my psychotherapy practice 7 years ago. And through that led me to working with other women going through their midlife transition, So yeah, that's how that journey began.
Yeah. Wow. Because you've had a really interesting career history, haven't you? But you've been a fashion model.
Yeah, look, I
Yeah.
started off at 16 as a fashion model in London, and I came to Australia at the age of 25. And at that time, there weren't that many Black models. So I just found myself suddenly propelled into doing all of this amazing work that maybe I wouldn't have had the opportunity if I stayed in London. So, and then that brought me into the fashion industry. So I spent 30 something years in the fashion industry as a model, but also a management role. And then I ended up teaching at a fashion college. For 14 years, I was at that fashion college, which I loved working in there. It's great mentoring other women.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you've like, that's a big difference. So it's a big difference from working in the fashion industry, which is really quite fast paced.
And it's also
Yeah.
youth focus,
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
yeah. And it's interesting because the fashion is fast paced. You've got to go to parties, you've got to be around, and you've got to be seen. But when I chose this career that I do now, I had 3 criterion, and one of them was that I would be able to sit down when I worked, because in fashion you're always up and running, So it had to be that I could sit down in a comfortable chair. 2, that I would get better at it as I aged, And 3, that the money would be really good. They were my 3 criteria, and this particular profession met all 3. I knew that I would get better at it as I age, as opposed to fashion, where as you age, you were kind of, being pushed out slowly.
Yeah, that that's true. Exact opposite. Yeah, wow. And yeah, fantastic. So isn't that incredible? And it's so different, psychotherapy to fashion. Like what made you think of that? I know you said you like helping women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I was definitely that friend. I was always that friend that everyone kind of came to, with their problems. At school, I was always a bit of a born leader. And I say that it's like I'm not, not to kind of, big note myself, but it was something that was kind of evident, because at school I was house captain, I was a prefect. And then in high school, I was the head girl of my school, So there was always those sort of things. And I was always the person that everyone came to with their problems, So I feel like it was something that was quite natural. And then also about 10 years ago, before I did the psychotherapy, I did an energetic healing modality. So I had a few clients from that. It was something, I was running my business and I did that on the side. So I had a few clients from that. So it kind of felt like a natural place to go, next.
Yeah, you're always just like the next step in your purpose.
Yes, that's exactly.
Yeah, I get it. And I love what you said about is how you can get better in this profession as you age, because there can be such a negative viewpoint around aging, even when you look at the beauty industry, there's all anti-aging products. It can be really quite negative, the viewpoint in society around aging, and yet you're from a culture that thinks exactly the opposite.
I feel so blessed to be able to have brought this, into the work that I do, because again, for me, I knew that in the fashion industry, ageism was an issue, but I really thought it was just isolated to the fashion industry. So when other women started to come to me in my practice, and that's really how Silver Sirens got born, was that women were referred to me because friends knew that I had a different view on aging. So when I started psychotherapy, women that they knew that were struggling with aging, they sent them to me. And then I just, this is actually quite a thing. I thought it was just kind of isolated in, people, but it was actually a thing. So that made me just really look at that. And I realized how fortunate I was that I grew up with the total opposite. My culture is that as you get older, you get better because you're much wiser. You've made a lot of your mistakes when you're younger, because you don't know any better. But now you've kind of refined, your knowledge, your skills, your abilities. So everybody wants to be older. Everyone adds to their ages, not take away, Like as soon as I'm one age, I'm already calling myself the next age. I can't wait to be 60. That comes from that culture where it's all about getting old. The oldest person in the room is the one that everyone looks up to, is the most special one in the room. That's the way it was, and that's how it was for me. And I also saw my mother come into her own at 50, in her 50s. Her relationship with my father broke down. She got a new lover. She studied. She started to travel the world for the first time. I just saw her just blossom, and I just always looked at her, just went, oh my God, I want what you've got. And she's always made aging look so skillful and so aspirational. So I've always wanted that because of her as well.
That's wonderful to have that role model.
Yes.
How cool is that? Yeah. And that cultural belief around aging as well. And I sincerely believe that it is that for all of us, that we do get better as we age, and we do come into our own, and we do have a lot of wisdom. And I'm exactly the same as you. I turn 60 next year and I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to it.
Amazing. And in therapy, what I found with a lot of women too, one of the processes I take them through is when we look at their fear of aging, what we uncover is it's actually not their beliefs. It's actually, the belief was actually not theirs in the first place. Yeah. Most of the time it's just things that they've internalized, and they've ingested. I always say they've ingested it. When we look at it and I say to them, but do you really believe that? Like, I've not had, probably actually one out of say 10, only one woman that said, yes, I do. The others have gone, no, it's a load of crap, So it's really, really interesting when we stop. But quite often we don't stop to think about it because we think that's the way we're meant to feel. We think it's a fact, and it's not a fact. It's a way of believing, it's a way of looking at it, but it's actually not the fact, because the fact proves the women are better, do get better as they age, their confidence. I love all that idea of that zero fuckness. That's only in older women that you get that, because we spend our 20s and our 30s self-doubt, imposter syndrome, and then you get to a stage where you think, I don't care anymore.
And it's those handover. It's especially women as they move into their elderly years. It's that hand over the mouth. Oh my God, she said it.
Yeah. I love it.
I love it. Yeah, society and listening to stories from the people that we look up to as we're aging as well. It's really interesting that you mentioned that, because when I first moved to Cairns, I lived in an apartment complex, and underneath the manager lived in the apartment complex underneath, and she was quite a few years older than me. And at the time I was going through perimenopause, and women have these chats, and I was saying, I'm so fed up of my period. I feel like I've had a period for a whole year. And I said, I can't wait until menopause, till my period stopped. And she said to me, don't wish for that, because that's when you start to look old. And I guarantee I looked in the mirror when my period stopped, and I could start to see wrinkles that I didn't see before. Isn't it amazing how we can be influenced by stories that we hear from other people?
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I feel quite passionate about pushing against when women say we become invisible, because it's almost kind of like it's robotic, it's automatic. It's like, you just hear women, anytime they talk about aging, they're using, oh my God, I'm afraid of becoming invisible. And it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, So as soon as I hear women say that, I just go, stop. What do you mean by that? Think about what you're actually saying, what you mean by that. What does invisibility mean? Is it invisible to the people that matter to you, or is it invisible to some random guy that's not wolf whistling you anymore? What is it? We just say it as if it's a fact again, and we have to be so careful when we say it, because then we can make it a reality. It's like words have power. We have to really be conscious of that.
Yeah, words do have power for sure. Absolutely. We do have to be really careful what we say. And it's really easy to do it because we see the headlines, don't we?
Yes.
We see the article titles and
We have to not contribute to it. That's what I say to women. Do not contribute to that and really challenge it. Is it true for you? Where is the invisibility? You know, is it your people that love you? Are you looking to outsiders to see you? You know, it's so important.
And how much do we see ourselves too is a big part of it.
It really is about seeing self. You know, that's exactly how it is. So when I work with women, that's the stuff we focus on, and it really transforms their attitude when they do that work.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, okay, so in what ways, some of the ways that we see ourselves that can actually hold us back, get in the way? What do you notice mostly?
And I've lost my value. So I think that what we ingest and internalize is that women are valuable, are only valuable through their beauty, their youth, and their fertility. And when that's gone, then there's no longer any value. You know, so those are the key ones that I see the women have internalized and they struggle with, you know, and they don't even realize they've internalized it, and they take it as a fact, you know, and it's not a fact. And that's the thing I always say. There's a thing in therapy when I work with you, I say, is it true? Like, your feelings and your despair are real, but is it true? And we're always distinguishing, it's real because I want to acknowledge how you're feeling and that you feel distressed around aging. But is it true that your value is less? You know, let's investigate that. You know, so a lot of it is around that. And women have a lot of distress around the physical changes that are going on in their bodies. A lot of the women, you know, I remember my first few women, the focus was around going grey. And one of the women, she belonged to a book club, and all of them, they were all dyeing their hair, and they talk about, oh my God, I'm not going to let any show. And then through our work together, she started to get courageous, and she started to take risks. And she said, I'm not going to dye my hair this month. And she didn't. And then you can see the roots, and we'll look at that. We'll talk about that. And I'll check in with her, how you feeling about this? And then we'll just kept going. And then what she found was that the women in her book club started to like look to her, and they were also in awe that she was that courageous. More and more of those women started to stop dyeing their hair. And then over time, there was this book club with all these women with different stages of going grey. And it was so gorgeous. It was so
So she started a movement.
Exactly. And I think we underestimate the influence that we have on the women around us. And I think one of the things that we do without consciously doing, we police each other to stay on that little narrow pathway that says, this is how you're supposed to age. And this is what beauty looks like. This is what value looks like. And I really want us to just keep challenging that. I want women to age on their own terms, and every woman should age the way she wants to. So if you want to have Botox, go ahead. If you want to have plastic surgery, go ahead. And if you don't want to, you want to go, great, don't be ashamed to do so. Go ahead. You know, and I think that's a really important message for women.
Yeah. Do aging your way. Instead of following a status quo.
There's no prescription. You do it your way, whatever that looks like.
I love it. Okay, so you actually, with these perceptions, you actually challenge them. Is it true? Yeah,
it's real because you're feeling them. So I want to acknowledge you, but is it true? So when we start to break that down, there's not usually much left. There's not much truth in it.
Yeah, it's true. Hey, really? Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess, you know, you start seeing other points of proof that it's untrue. Yeah.
So when you look for it, you know, when you start to challenge it, you look for it, you find evidence. You know, if you believe something, we know that, you know that in coaching, you believe something, you will find all the evidence to back that up. But when you start to challenge that and have another view, you will find the evidence to back that up.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's why, because when we're looking for that evidence, we find it so easily. Like it's right there.
Society will be throwing it at us, you know, it's everywhere. We can easily find it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. Yeah. Okay. So it's really about redefining aging within ourselves, noticing our own value, because that sounds like it's one of the biggest blocks is not listening to the stories around us.
And be okay with the changes that are going to happen. I mean, it's not a Pollyanna movement that there are not challenges. There are physical challenges. When we've been in this body for X amount of years, there are wear and tear that are going to show. Be okay with that. You know, so we're not saying, oh, everything's perfect. These are natural things. But what we're saying is that aging is a natural process for a human being. If you have the privilege of still being alive, which I lost my sister at 41, I lost another really dear for her 50th birthday. If we are privileged to age, there are going to be challenges in that. There are going to be deterioration of body. That's a normal part of it. So we're not pretending that's not part of the process. But in terms of the psychological and the self-esteem issues attached to that, we can challenge those. And if we accept the physical, we can also then prepare ourselves, because there's things that we can do. We can have agency in how we age to a certain extent, because a lot of us may not have needed to ever worry about our bodies or our health before. But at the cumulative effect of living, suddenly the first sign starts to show around now. So this is when we jump on. So I am so super strict with myself. The first sign of anything, I make sure I go and see someone. Like, whereas before I would just kind of leave it. Now it's like, no, it's my job to take care of my body, because that's going to make a big difference on the next 30 years of my life.
I agree. So we have a lot of control over how well we age. Because it's not about not aging. It's not about anti-aging. It's aging well. Yeah.
It's about I'm taking agency and taking responsibility for our health. I think that's a really, really important factor.
And in turn, that's going to change the way we feel about ourselves. I mean, like you say, it's going to change. We're going to have changes around us. I look in the mirror and look at my body and I think, yeah, but it's not the same as it was 15 years ago. It's not.
I know.
It kind of is okay.
I've been having that with my body too. Now, as a model, I didn't have to ever diet or ever go to the gym. And then, in my 40s, when my waist went into menopause, I started wearing muumuus, and I was going, what's going on here? And it's like, oh, my body's changing. And it was quite confronting, but it's like, this is what happens. This is normal. This is natural. So I'll have to exercise a little bit more than I ever used to.
Yeah. And the same. It's like I used to be like a washboard, and now I've got some curves, and it's kind of okay.
Curves are good. I love curves.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, so it's really the way we experience aging is, first of all, about the way we look at it, the way we see our value, the way we talk to ourselves. What we choose to believe, and also in that there is what we actually do to make sure that we age well as well. And it's not just a diet thing or an exercise thing. It's accumulation of the whole thing.
Even down to like the money, a lot of the women that I work with as well, they may have come through a divorce, and the husband's kind of left them with nothing, some of them, it's actually quite upsetting and quite frightening to see what's going on, or the husband's hidden money. There's a lot of that sort of stuff. So part of aging well is about taking control of their finances again. I think that's an important thing. And I feel really passionate about women. Even if you're in the best relationship, please have some agency over your money. No one knows, but just have some agency. So some women, it's the first time they've taken agency around their money, and that improves their self-esteem. And that gives them hope about what's ahead of them as well. So all of those sort of things. So it's really quite holistic. It's not just the physical or just the psychological. It is looking at every aspect. Yeah.
It's the whole thing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And absolutely agree with that, with making sure that we've got some ownership around our finances, even if we're in a relationship. And speaking of relationship, I know that you were very much like me, getting to the age of 50 and thinking, oh, well, I'm resigning myself to spending the next few years on my own. And the same happened to you as happened to me. Which is, finding a relationship after 50 as well. That can be another area where we have that fixed mindset of I'm too old, or men aren't going to find me attractive anymore, or they're men. And there's another story, men prefer younger women. There's another one. Yeah.
And that's one that I hear so much. And again, I so challenge that, because for me personally, I know most of the men I know prefer women their own age. That's the fact. And you see that most men out there, but we see the stereotype of the man going after the young woman and running off in his porch, you know, so we've internalized that, but I don't think that's based on any fact, even research. But it is something that we're told. So a lot of women get really frightened. So like you and I mean, for me, I never worried about worrying about how I'm going to look. I never worried about that. I'm blessed with melanin, so we're not likely to age, you know, in the same way. But I never thought about it in that way. But what I thought about, you know, what really plagued me was that I was leftover. I was a leftover woman because no one had chosen to marry me. The fact that I'd run away from 2 engagements, I was the one that ran away from those engagements, was a fact. But I didn't look at that. I was just like, oh my God. So everyone's going to think no one's married you. There must be something wrong with you. You must be this broken person. So that's what held me back, you know, but I did a lot of work around that and, you know, put myself out there. And I'm so grateful, you know, I'm in a relationship with a man that came out of a 20-year marriage. And that's what I say to a lot of women that are single. People are coming in and out of marriages all the time. There's always new people coming. Not that we want that to be the case, but it's a reality. So they'll always say there's no men out there. It's like there are, because people are breaking up all the time, you know. So there's always new people that then when they dust themselves down, they're ready to go again. And I'm one of those men, 20 years in the marriage, that wasn't working for either of them. No one did anything bad. Both lovely people. Like, he's such a good man, and he's always spoken really well about his ex-wife. So I know there's nothing like that, but they just fell out of love. That happens to people, you know, and I met one of those men, you know, and it's definitely the best relationship that I've ever had. And I don't know, think about him. I think it's about me. I'm so much more confident. I would have been so high maintenance, mainly because of my low self-esteem. I didn't realize I had low self-esteem and I needed reassurance and I was manipulative. I didn't know that about myself. I don't do that stuff anymore. I want peace in my relationship. I want respect in my relationship. And I don't think I could have done that any earlier. You know?
Yeah, I get that. And I've heard men actually comment on that kind of thing, of that they prefer women their own age because younger women are hard work. Yeah.
That's exactly. And if you're young too, you could probably deal with it. But when they're 50 and 60, they probably don't want to be dealing with that.
Yeah, they like the older woman, the woman their own age, because they're more confident, they're more sure of themselves. Yeah,
that's exactly what I hear all the time. They're more confident, they're more sure of themselves. That's the exact 2 words I hear from men. Absolutely.
Yeah, love it. Love it. So there's so many parts of looking at aging in a positive way, you know, and rather than thinking about, oh, this is the beginning of the end. I don't think, I mean, that story is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, isn't it, in society? It's where there's a real movement happening where we are beginning to speak out, and we are creating a new narrative.
We live an example. And we literally are the living example. You know, there's women like you and I, there's so many, through my work at Silver Sirens, I meet so many women like you and I. We live an example that it's not true, you know. So that's the best thing you can do, the role model.
Yeah, for sure. Love it. Thank you for everything you've shared, Faith. You've shared some real pearls of wisdom, and I know it's going to make a massive difference to so many ladies out there. Thank you so much. It's been a fantastic conversation.
Thank you. I really love everything that you do. Thank you so much for all that you contribute to my projects as well, to Silver Sirens. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I love everything you do as well. I really love everything you do. And I particularly love the, you know, the culture that you're creating there. It's really, really beautiful. Yeah. And thank you for joining us. I hope that you found that conversation as interesting as we enjoyed having that conversation. If you found the content helpful and insightful, please remember to like, share, subscribe to this channel, and click the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on the next video coming out. Lots of love to you, and I'll look forward to connecting with you next time. Bye-bye.